Who's going to be fighting for the vacant light heavyweight title? Hello everybody and welcome to Against the Fence, where of course this is the place to be if you're obsessed and passionate about the sport of mixed martial arts and the UFC. We've got a jam-packed aftermath show heading your way. We've got lots to talk about. We're going to be fully recapping the events from the UFC 291 main card. We're going to be talking about Justin Gaethje's next move. Does he want a fight with Conor McGregor or not? Will Dustin Poirier potentially move to welterweight? What's next for him? Should Tony Ferguson retire coming off of that loss against Bobby Green? And is Derrick Lewis going to be off to the PFL? Lots to talk about. And of course, we'll round up and talk about what's next in the light heavyweight division. Who's going to be fighting it out for that vacant belt, which is the main topic of this aftermath show. So can't wait to get involved with it. Can't wait to hear your opinions on everything from this past weekend. There's lots to get through. Chat's coming in and we got your favorite blockhead is in the house already. He says, taking a break from working in my classroom to join ATF. And look, oh man, the timing is right, Brian. Triple B. Good to see you, my man. Can't wait to hear more of your thoughts on what's next for these guys coming in. So I probably should start off with talking about some notable names who are in the prelims. Got to give a shout out to Gabriel Bonfim, who defeated Trevin Giles via submission in round number 1. Of course, Trevin Giles been on the channel before. I've spoken to him. But Gabriel Bonfim is one of these up-and-coming prospects in the welterweight division. Man, it's looking really good in that division. There's some top names coming through. Of course, Roman Kopylov with that head kick knockout as well. The first head kick knockout of the night. Shout out to him. He was nicely set up shot there. Was gutted to see our boy Matt Semmelsberger, who's been on the channel before. He lost via that spinning back fist TKO on the prelims. And of course, Miranda Maverick back on winning ways, getting the submission armbar in round number 3. So look, shout out to obviously those people getting wins, of course. Unlucky for those who didn't make it. Yes, Brian, L Cucumber. Ash is still cracking up about that, Brian. That really tickled us. Even though you weren't meant to say it, it did make us crack up. So good job on that front. Let's dive in then. Lots to talk about, man. Lots to talk about. Let's dive in then in terms of, let's talk about the first fight on the main card, which was, of course, oh, wrong one, wrong scene, dosh, which was Kevin Holland picking up that submission win in round number 1 against Michael Chiesa. Another Bravo choke, Darce choke, loss for Michael Chiesa. But Kevin Holland kind of knew that he had to come into this fight and put the pressure on Chiesa early, because Chiesa had been out for a little bit of a long time. 2 back-to-back losses, of course. One against Vicente Luque, and the other one, was it Neil Magny? I can't remember off the top of my head now. So, you know, he needed to really put on a clinic this past weekend. But did ring rust play into factor for Chiesa, into his performance? I definitely felt like it did. He didn't really seem to get going a little bit. Was a little bit too shy with his entries. But, you know, for Kevin Holland, he did, in his post-fight interview, talk about moving back up to 185. And after seeing his run at the moment at welterweight, we're like, no, Kevin, why? Why do you want to do that? Why do you want to go back into 185 when you're having some good success at welterweight? But I hope that his coaches can sit him down and convince him to stay at welterweight. You know, I think it's more or less a discipline thing. Maybe that's what he's kind of struggling at the moment. So I've got some matchups for him, 2 at 170, and I've got 1 for him at 185 anyway, to throw things in. Your favourite Brockhead Brian says, L Cucumber may figuratively be in a pickle with his career, to be honest. Look at that. Oh, he's bringing it all out tonight. The fight was awesome, he says. Ash says, you're the man, bro. Yeah, couldn't get going. Yeah, for sure. And, you know, you do got to question Michael Chiesa a little bit, you know. I've got some good options for him coming right up. But as for Kevin Holland, though, I would like to see him fight either 2 of these guys at welterweight. Smack a like on the video if you've not done so already. My first option is Neil Magny. because I think, he's coming off of a win against Phil Rowe. He looked impressive back in June. Timing-wise, kind of makes a bit sense. It's another long-rangey welterweight who can kind of wrestle and grapple. So stylistically on paper, that's a really intriguing fight. And of course, I'd probably give the power advantage to Kevin Holland in that fight. And of course, his unpredictability might cause problems for Neil Magny. And for Neil Magny, I think he would probably want to try and wrestle and clinch up with Holland and drag the fight out, really. That's where I would see it. My other option for yes, Morning Breezy, good to see you, my man. Can't wait to listen to your opinions on this. The post UFC 291, and smash a like on the video, brother. Good to see you coming in. But yeah, the other option for Kevin Holland would be Jack Della Maddalena. Of course, I'm a bit of a Jack Della Maddalena fan myself, and I think Jack can deal with someone like Kevin Holland, to be honest, on the feet. The last guy he fought really troubled him in terms of the takedowns and the grappling aspects. The ultimate question going into that fight with Kevin Holland is whether or not Kevin Holland can take Jack Della Maddalena down. Now, I don't know that Kevin Holland has been working on his wrestling. He keeps working on his wrestling. Is it something that we can see more and more of throughout in the future? Maybe that's the reason why he fancies his chances back at 185. So very interesting to see. A lot of questions coming out of this past weekend with Kevin Holland. But yeah, I think striking-wise, I think Jack's head movement, and he's going to want to get into range with Kevin, definitely, and rip to the body. And Kevin, I think, is going to want to use some unorthodox striking. He's going to use lands elbows on Jack. So, it's a big toss-and fight up for me. I would want to say favoritism, 60% Jack Della Maddalena to the 40, I'm afraid. So very close, of course, but that's the way I would probably give it. We are terrific, Breezy, mate. I'm good to see you in the chat. That's even better for seeing you, of course. Favorite broadcast, Brian says, I'm liking the Jack Della Maddalena option. Yeah, I think, with Jack did have a handful in his last fight, but he did deserve to fight upwards. So I think he should fight upwards. Now, I think if we take it into, the rankings there so we can all have a look. You can see he actually leapfrogs Jack Della Maddalena in there. And he moves in there in a cushy spot of number 12, just behind Ian Gary. So that would make sense for Jack Della Maddalena to fight up, 15-fight win streak, just defended his ranking against a very tough guy who was making his UFC debut. So, look, why not? And normally, this is the words of Chris Curtis. Normally, when a guy moves up in rankings, they are then forced to defend their ranking. Of course, some guys, that's not always the case. But, for that reason, I think that fight makes sense. And look, I'd be so down to see that. Pay-per-view, of course. Kevin Holland's always on pay-per-views. Jack Della Maddalena has been in the last few, I think, pay-per-views. So, I'd probably put it third on the card. There we go. There it is. Ash says, that would be such a great fight. Yeah. Entertaining. Potential fight of the night. Excuse me. I've just waffed down a curry, so might get a little bit of indigestion. Breezy says, oh, don't. You're making me blush. Man, this is why you come to this show. We like to. I just like to give people hard-ons by giving them awesome fights to think about. But yeah, my 185 option for Kevin Holland, if that is definitely going to be a move, would be the winner of Chris Curtis versus Anthony Hernandez. Now, we don't have the middleweight rankings for you guys at the moment, but I'll take a little bit of a glance. Of course, Chris Curtis in at number 14, and Anthony Hernandez just floating outside the rankings, and he deserves somebody in the rankings because he's looked pretty impressive in recent bouts. I think he's been picking up some submission wins here and there. Of course, submitted Rodolfo Ferreira, which was a big one. Edmund Shabazi and TKO finish was nasty. The arm triangle against Marc-Andre Barriou, just to name a few. And of course, he did lose to Kevin Holland. Actually, I didn't even know that. Okay. Would they run it back? So maybe it would be a matter of whether or not Chris Curtis gets past Anthony Hernandez then. The Chris Curtis versus Kevin Holland would be ideal for Kevin Holland because Chris Curtis is not necessarily going to go for takedowns. He's going to use that shuffle. He's going to use his boxing and really try and rip into Kevin Holland. So I think that would be an interesting fight. Personally, I would give the edge to Chris Curtis, perhaps. But who knows? Holland versus Usman, please, says Breezy. Wow, that's a shot out of the dark, my man. Someone says that it doesn't look like Breezy's a fan of Kevin Holland and wants to throw him wrestlers again. Fair enough. But yeah, they're just my picks. Get your picks down in the chat as well. Any more that you might suggest you think there might be a better option. And you think, JK, you're wrong, and I've got this one's the one to blow it all out of the park, then by all means, whack him in the chats and smack a like on the video. As for Michael Chiesa, then, moves 16-7 now. For me, I'm recommending him a sports psychologist. That would be his next move. Just purely because, he's just looked a little bit flat as of recent, and should be better. Really, but then at the same time, it could be a good idea for him to jump straight back in there. Round 1 submission, barely took any damage. Why not? We normally see that. There is a pattern where a lot of losers do get in there a lot quicker than the guy that they lost to. So I think that's what Chiesa needs, really. I wouldn't say hanging it up yet for him. 3 on the bounce now: Luque, Sean Brady, and Kevin Holland. So, yeah, the next sort of fight is you're looking at somebody just outside the rankings, and I think this one's going to be a really good one for you guys. If you know who he is, of course. Ash says, F it, Shavkat versus Holland. Wow, that is some jump up. Look, Shavkat might need a fight yet. We did find out earlier today that Kelvin Gastelum has got a nasty cut on his nose there. So, look, you could be onto something there, Ash. You could be onto something that wasn't a pick that I suggested and flew in there. But for Michael Chiesa, this fight makes a lot of sense, and it's Michael Morales. 15-0. Of course, you're probably like JK, but you're not giving Michael Chiesa any favours here. But Chiesa's got some, he's got some experience under his belt in the UFC. And that weighs heavily in this game. And, of course, Michael Morales just recently beat Max Griffin, who was someone with a bit of experience, but I don't really think Max Griffin's got the overall package. He's not the most technically efficient of fighters. And, but is Michael Morales ready for someone with more experience? Is the ultimate question for you guys. What do you think? Because could he capitalise against someone who's on a bit of a downfall? It's an ideal fight for Morales. Michael versus Michael. What do we reckon? What do we think? Is it an ideal shot? Favourite Blocker says, talk about throwing Holland into the deep end of the ocean. I would hesitate to even give Holland right away to Gilbert Burns or anyone in the top 5. Well, yeah. If you really hate Kevin Holland, then yeah, you would. Yeah. That, to be fair, Burns used to be a lightweight, so Kevin should tower over Burns, similar to the way to what Hamzat did. So I think it's a very intriguing fight. Perhaps potentially one similar to the Hamzat one. It would be an all-out war, 100%. Fight night headliner. He says, I like the Jack Della Maddalena option. Maybe Gary versus Magny or Luque. Yeah, I mean, Ian Gary's got to get through Jeff Neal. Let's not forget about that. And that fight, I think, is coming up pretty soon. So, maybe after that fight, then yeah, you could be looking at one of those guys. But then, maybe not Luque, because Ian Gary has trained with Luque in the past. So I don't know if that'll happen. Don't feed him, Morales, says Ash. Well, sorry, man. I mean, that's the only real option I've got for Michael Chiesa. I know. It's very mean of me. No, Morales, just Cumber, cold and crisp, says Blockhead. Yeah, he is. I'm really excited to see what's next for that guy, because look, he is barely any fault in his game. He looks solid throughout. But yeah, of course, few changes in the rankings itself. Sean Brady moving down a spot. Ian Gary moving up to 13. I think he needs a new tattoo now. Didn't he not get a tattoo of his ranking when he first got into the rankings? So I think he needs another tattoo. Della Maddalena and Chiesa moving down. That's crazy. UFC are trying to fast track Ian Gary here. We can see what's happening. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, because I think they will do a fight night in Dublin at some point. I think the 10-year anniversary of the Conor headliner against Brandao is coming up. I think next year. So I think we're going to see an Ian Gary headliner. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. That's early prediction from me. But then let's head back to the second fight of the night. Let's talk about that arm triangle from Bobby Green, beating Tony Ferguson, of course, in round number 3. Who saw it coming? Who had money on a submission? I don't think anyone really did. You know, it's just not Bobby Green's game, is it? But that's his 8th submission win in his career, and I think he's got like 10 knockouts as well. But look, Kevin, 9th submission win. But look, Bobby Green was kind of on point with his counter striking in this fight. He dealt with Ferguson's unpredictable nature very well, I found, and he kind of stayed busy on top position when on ground because he didn't let Tony Ferguson have a moment to think or a moment to adjust to attack the triangle or even throw elbows from the bottom, because usually we're used to seeing Tony Ferguson throw those elbows from the bottom, but he was unable to get them all off at all. Unable to get them off. Smash a like if you're very impressed with Bobby Green's performance. Fabi Brocco says he is a different breed of cat, not as much as Ferguson, but an interesting guy he is nonetheless. For me, my take on this was, yeah, okay, Bobby Green can have some off nights, and he's been around for some time, but when you look at his recent performances, he has been getting better and better. So yes, it was a step down for Tony Ferguson in a way, but it was an ideal fight to make Bobby Green look good in a way, because he had been developing. Other than that, of course, Drew Dober lost, which he got a bit complacent in that fight. Let's be real, and that's what led to him getting knocked out. I think he learned his lesson from that. He was very calculated against Ferguson, wasn't playing mind games with him too much, and it's exciting to see what's going to be coming next for that guy. To be honest, actually, I didn't even write anyone down. That's we'll get into that in just a sec then. But let's touch on for Tony Ferguson. We're going to talk about potential retirement later on in the news show. Stick around for that. But he's on a 6-fight losing streak now. Will we see him retire? Is the ultimate question that hangs over everybody's head. But I don't think so. That's early doors. We'll get into it a little bit more, like I said. But I want to give one matchup for him. Yes, Damo, I see you, my man. Biggest shock of the night, I think. 100%. But yeah, Tony Ferguson, my one option for him would be Jim Miller, UFC 300 next year. Who says no? Who says no? Yes, Jim Miller has been like running through these up-and-comers, and he's looked really good at doing it. He doesn't fight that often. Somebody with experience, I think, has got to be next for Tony Ferguson. You know? He's, again, you know, Tony Ferguson's been fighting better competition than Jim Miller. So, for that reason, I think that fight kind of makes sense. Tony's fought twice, I think, this year. So, I think he'll wait till next year. I think he needs to heal up. I mean, he's not the same. He's not the same fighter as before. But, you know, he wants to carry on. We'll get into that in a sec. Yeah, as for the ranking zone lightweight, Bobby Green still hanging on the outside there. Surely he's due a ranked opponent again. You'd think so. I mean, I'd like to see him fight Matt Frevola. I really would. But like we keep saying, Matt Frevola's really gunning for that Paddy fight, and I don't think he's going to accept anything other than that. So, man, I don't think it's going to be Renato Moicano. Do you know what? Joel Alvarez versus Bobby Green. I'm throwing it out there now. Because I didn't have one written down. I've completely forgot to write it down. But I'd go for Joel Alvarez, perhaps. You know, because he's been somebody who's... All right, he had a hiccup against Sarukian. Fell short. He was against a ranked opponent. Beat the brakes off of Thiago Moises. Very experienced vet. He just came off of that submission win against Mark Chiesa, which was quite shocking. So, yeah, Bobby Green against Joel Alvarez, I think it's a fun one. I think it's a great test for both guys. Either that or you chuck in Bobby Green versus Diego Ferreira. Get someone else with experience coming off a TKO win against Michael Johnson. That fight was back in May, so not too far ago. But yeah, there would be my options for Bobby Green. What do you guys reckon in the chat? Favorite Brocken says, I questioned the eye gouge when it happened. I knew it would imper Tony from that point forward. Yeah, I mean, yeah, Tony fans are really kind of riding on that a little bit. I don't know, man. I think, look, it is unfortunate, but at the same time, the referee said to him, "Are you ready? Do you want to continue?" And he could, and the ref gave him more time to kind of sit out and deal with it, but he was adamant on getting back in there. So, is it Tony's fault a little bit? You know, that he had to fight through it. You know, toughness got the better of him. I think. I wasn't surprised. I was upset, says Sai. Tony Ferguson, Defo El Cucumber. Tony is done, surely, says Ash. Favourite Brocker says, I think Ferguson deserves one last fight night against a decent ranked fighter, not a killer, and see if he persevere or rides off into the sunset. I mean, that's a thing, though. You know, you're then looking at guys who aren't necessarily finishers, who in this division, I should probably give it a shot now. Is not really much of a finisher. Personally, I would be looking at Grant Dawson. But again, why would you give him against an absolute killer who's up and coming? He looked phenomenal against Ismagulov, and that's a horrible fight. Jalen Turnan's fallen off edge a little bit. Maybe, but again, he's young. He's a killer. Renato Moicano, I think, would be a fun one. And maybe Moicano would be inclined to take that one. But yeah, I personally think it should be somebody outside the rankings. Don't know. Let's get back to the chat. George Merry's in the house. Yes, George Merry. Clap George Merry in, guys. And wish him all the best. And of course, pop a like on the video. He says, good evening, men of finest UK MMA channel. Thank you, George. The matchmaker has finished work and can now enjoy this on way home. Yes, George. Good man. Good. Thanks for popping by, of course. Can't wait to hear your opinions. Ash says the Spanish Wrecking Ball would kill him in terms of talking about Bobby Green there. Maybe, of course. Big fan of Joe Alvarez is Ash. Maybe you got to just keep seeing if his English is getting better, Ash. You know what I mean? George says, Islam Bobby 2, skip the queue, emphasis. I mean, well, I think Bobby Green, he's surely getting more and more fans now, isn't he? You know, he's a fun watch. He's entertaining leading into fight week. And he's even entertaining during the fights as well. He's fought some absolute killers and people who are just way up there in the rankings now. So, yeah, I think he's progressing. He's progressing, man. Sai says the eye poke excuse is ridiculous, but I'm not buying it. Our fighter preserve through things like that all the time. Yeah, but Sai, have you ever been poked in the eye, mate? Let's be real. Who enjoys an eye poke here? It is probably the worst thing. What would you guys rather do? Would you rather get kicked in the nuts or take an eye poke? It's a difficult question. I actually generally don't know. I think if you get kicked in the nuts, you could maybe, I don't know, try and fight through it. It depends, I guess. But look, if you're struggling to see and your eyes all over the gaff, then it's not great. But then I guess Bisbin managed to do it without one eye. But then you're fighting with a sore eye. It hurts. No, I'm sympathy for anyone who takes an eye poke. Your favourite block creator says, one dark horse in the rankings everyone is forgotten about is Arman Sarukian. He'll be number one contender soon, and I stand by this. 100% agree with you, Brian. Sarukian's a nightmare for anyone. I look forward to seeing him fighting. He did have a tough bout again, similar to JDM. Against a guy who was coming in on short notice, gave him a real good one. But again, short notice, without prep. I know it's even on both sides, but yeah, I think Sarukian, it's a tough call, isn't it? Do you Sarukian versus Dariush? Is that already happened? I'd do that. Yeah, I reckon that's probably next for him. Why not? I felt he beat Gamrot. I've said that many times. Breezy says Tony versus Paddy, right? UFC London, start of next year. Yeah, I wouldn't be against that. I'd quite like that. So Tony is now pretty much outside of the rankings. So, yeah. But man, that'd be wild. That'd be such a weird fight, I think, thinking about it. It really would. Again, Paddy's not going to exactly finish Tony with strikes. It would come down to submissions, and Tony's been submitted twice in a row now. So, good fight for Paddy. I like it, but I don't know. Well, I think other people might want that for a Vola fight, but love the option, Breezy. Block Ahead says, spend years doing a podcast about peanuts, MMA, etc. What is my claim to fame? El Cucumber. Oh, well. I mean, look, everyone loves it. Everyone loves it, Brian. Honestly, the El Cucumber podcast. Rename it. I'm joking. I'm joking. Side hustle. The El Cucumber podcast. Brought to you by Triple B. There you go. At UFC London, book it, says Ash. So, yeah, we'd love to see Tony down over here in London, wouldn't we? I wear contact lenses, poke myself in the eye every day, multiple times. Easy work, says Breezy. But not full pelt, though, is it? Let's be real. George says, definitely Gordon rematch for Bobby and Tony versus Frivola. So he likes Tony versus Frivola. I mean, I don't know. Stylistically, I like it, but ranking-wise, doesn't really make a lot of sense. You know, you feel me? That's my thought. But anyhow, moving on then to matchups. But yeah, those are my options for Bobby Green. Of course, Joe Alvarez potentially, or some other cat like that, Renato Camarcano. For Tony Ferguson, Jim Miller, UFC 300. Make it happen, because Jim Miller's going to sit out for the UFC 300. Let's be real. I don't know when that's going to materialize next year. I'd say probably midway point, I reckon. So, fingers crossed. Stick around, Tony. Heading on back then to, let me clear that chat, the third fight of the night, of course. Who was excited to see Derrick Lewis back to winning ways? And look, he wasted no time in doing it. He didn't want a long, drawn-out fight at altitude, because that wasn't going to do him any favours. Although, his opening move didn't really do him any favours, really. There's a lot of energy for a flying knee attempt. But look, it landed. You're going to take it at the end of the day. And look, he stops his 3-fight losing streak in impressive fashion against Marcus Rogério Feijão de Lima. There you go, putting it all together there. Yeah, I think it was, look, classic Derrick Lewis. For me, we talked about some options at the weekend. I've actually got two. One that we didn't mention, I don't think, for Derrick Lewis. We'll talk and touch upon whether or not he's going to stick with the UFC a little bit later on. Could the PFL give him a lucrative offer? Stick around for that, for the socials segment of the show. But first off, we'll talk about the upcoming matchups, because we've been crying this one out multiple times during aftermath shows and watch-alongs. It's got to be Jairzinho Rozenstruik, because they've not fought before. It's the battle of the bangers. Sugar. Yeah, and it'll be come down to who's going to crumble first in that fight. For me, who's going to hit the cleanest and just kind of shy away a little bit, because that's what Derrick Lewis tends to do from time to time. But as you can see, no movement for Derrick Lewis, finding someone below him. Rozenstruik, the only downfall of that is Rozenstruik's coming off a loss against Jailton Almeida. So, do you want him fighting upwards? But, look, there's no other real options, is there? For both guys, in and around there. They've all fought people before. So, that's really the only option to make. Rozenstruik coming off the TKO loss against Jailton Almeida. We could see another quick finish in that one. Really could, you know? If the UFC get bored and they've not got any fight night headliners, maybe they'll put it as a fight night headliner. Personally, well, Derrick Lewis is done with 5-round fights, but, you know, you never know. George, I will ask Matt Frivola, says Ash Easton. I will ring him quick. No, don't be silly. Of course you're not going to do it. But yeah, on to the picks for Derrick Lewis. My other one would be Alexander Romanov, because he's back to winning ways after beating Blagoy Ivanov. And you're probably thinking, JK, why would you give Derrick Lewis a wrestler. You know, why would you give him a wrestler? Well, look, the UFC have been giving him these stand and bang kind of guys, and you know they've not always been paying off as of recent. But not only that, Alexander Romanov actually looked pretty comfortable on the feet against Blagoy Ivanov, who's got some pretty good boxing, I think. Ivanov. Unfortunately, Ivanov got cut after that fight. Romanov did get Blagoy down eventually, but we saw more of his striking. It was good to see. So, you know, I'm interested to see whether or not the UFC would make that fight happen. George Murray says the Black Beast will join PFL / Bellator and fight Francis. We'll get into that a little bit later on, my man. Can't wait to chalk that up. Brian says he did it all. Masvidal knee, signature dance, shorts off to give his boys some mountain breeze. A hilarious post-fight interview. It was hilarious. I mean, classic Derrick Lewis, wasn't it? He near enough stole the show, really, with that. And fair play to him. Fair play to him. But yeah, questions. Romanov gonna look for takedowns against Lewis straight away, grind him out. I think it'd be a nice win for Romanov to get back in there, but it'd be interesting because I think he would then take the number 11 spot should he beat Derrick Lewis. Marcin Tybura will then move into number 10 because Tybura's got a win over Romanov. So it'll be a lot of movement there. Wouldn't be a fun fight for Derrick Lewis. But the UFC got to be careful because if they want to tie him down to another deal, they've got to at least give him some good matchups, in my opinion. You know, because, I don't know. He's a fan favourite nonetheless, isn't he? Derrick Lewis. I mean, win or lose, we're going to tune in to watch him fight. Lewis versus Almeida, says George Murray. Wow, come on, George. No, well, Geraldton Almeida's going to beat Curtis Blaydes. That's my take, and he's going to skyrocket up that division. It's going to happen. So yeah, for that I think no. Brian says, would he possibly consider a rematch with Blaydes if offered to them in a new contract? You know what? That's a really good point, Brian. That is a really good point. He could perhaps use that in there in the negotiations. We'll get into that a bit later, of course. I have only one option for Marcus Rogério de Lima. I'd give him Don'Tale Mayes, you know, who's 10-5 at the moment. He beat Andrei Arlovski back in June. Timing wise, that fight makes sense. De Lima sitting in at number 15 there. Wow, would you give Don'Tale Mayes a shot into the rankings? I mean, well, after beating Arlovski. It's the question. What do you guys think? I don't know. Against a vet like Arlovski, who was on a good run, to be fair, you would kind of deserve a ranked guy. And if that's going to be a ranked guy, number 15, De Lima is the one. But that's my option. So, yeah. Moving on then swiftly. Let me clear the chat. To the co-main event. The co-main event. Man, I was pretty stoked by this decision. But I was a bit nervous. I personally thought that Jan Błachowicz was going to win. Because, you know, I just felt that he was going to do exactly what he did in round one. You know? Pereira faced the difficulty in round one when fighting off the back mount for the majority of the round. Some could argue, was it a 10-8? Should it have been a 10-8? Judges didn't feel that way. 10-9 to Jan. You know, I thought that, personally, heading into this fight, I felt that round one was going to be the story of the whole fight. Jan takes Pereira down, passes guard, softens him up, tires him out, rinse and repeat. Work submissions, but not necessarily get them. That was how I saw that fight going, which is why I picked Jan. But look, at the end of the day, the leg kicks did do damage in round number 2 to Jan. And we saw Jan start to fade. Quite shockingly, to be fair. You know, he faded Pereira. I think it made Pereira look really good. Cardio-wise. You know, you look at him and you think he's a big puncher. Surely he's going to fade and fade quite drastically. But he just uses his output so well. And the fact that Jan faded way before him was quite shocking to me. But one judge felt that Jan won the fight, scoring the third round to him. Now, he got a takedown around round 3, but I still think that the Pereira was kind of the more dangerous guy coming forward and landing, the most significant strikes and the damaging strikes to Jan, in my opinion. So, that's why I would have given the whole fight to Pereira. But the question I have got for you guys is, how did you score the fight? Excuse me. Should Błachowicz have got the win? But if not, if he shouldn't have got the win, was this Alex Pereira's biggest win to date? Was it his biggest win? I think it was. I actually think it was, and here's why. Because he'd already, he'd beaten Izzy for the belt and captured the light heavyweight belt. The middleweight belt. But he'd already beaten Izzy at that point in kickboxing, right? To go up in weight class, right, after getting knocked out by Izzy not so long ago, and beat the guy that beat Izzy, right, in 5 rounds, former champion, I think it's the biggest fight of his career. I genuinely think it was. Blockhead says, I feel it was one for one. The 3rd round determined everything, and the judges seemed to sway by Alex. I agree with the split decision. It could have gone either way. Yeah, it was a close one. It wasn't a robbery. Jan was calling it a robbery post-fight. But look, I think, we use that word very loosely after fights these days. They were close fights, but I don't think it was. Charlotte Easton. Ash's missus in the house. Says, hello, Jordan. Ash keeps going on about this Spanish guy called Alvarez. I think it's his new lover. It really is. I'm telling Frankie, if I see Frankie again, I'm telling him. Generally him. I think, look, if you two have yet another kid, congratulations to the Eastons, by the way. To Ash and his wife. They have got another kid on the way. He has told, which he was going to announce at the watch long, by the way. He was going to do a gender reveal and everything. But I'm giving it to you guys in the show because she popped up at the moment. And I want to make this point. If you have another child, will it be called Joel? Will it be called Joel? Because this, that's the question I got. I mean, look, I'm all for the questions tonight. But do you think that Alex Pereira's fight did you think Jan Błachowicz was his biggest win today? I think it was. Yeah, let us know. Smash a like on the video if you've not done so already. We've got lots to get through, okay? Yes, the Spanish record will. Let's get into then what will be the vacant light heavyweight title fight. It's kind of the big topic of tonight's contest. Because look, it's clear as day that yes, Pereira should fight for the belt. That should be his next fight. But is it going to be the next fight that's made? Really? Brian says it is Pereira's most important fight to solidify a spot in a different weight class. And that is true. That is spot on. Let's actually have a look at the rankings because we've not done so already. So as you can see there, he slots in at number 3 there quite comfortably. I can confirm he has now slipped out of the middleweight rankings. So rightly so, and I did wonder that. So yeah, just below Magomed Ankalaev and Yuri Prochazka. But should he be fighting for the vacant belt next? Okay. Now there's a lot of things to get through this, so do listen carefully. I am not sure that'll be next. Ariel spoke to Yuri yesterday. Yuri said he's in Thailand and he's working on his wrestling. He said to Ariel, now his English is not great, okay, so it is a little bit broken, but from analysing it, this is the vibe that I got from it. And he said, my next opponent is a more stand-upper. It looks like it's not confirmed yet. So when he was talking about going over to do camp in Thailand, my ultimate question is, was Yuri scheduled to fight somebody prior to Pereira versus Błachowicz? Now you're probably thinking, yeah, it probably was Jamal Hill. But why was that fight not announced? Is it just poor timing? Did they not get a deal done in time? And then Jamal Hill got injured. But Yuri also said Alex has the chance to show a good title fight. I'd like to see him as an opponent in my next fight. So he was clearly judging from, because he didn't want to reveal anything. He didn't want to reveal that. He didn't say directly, Alex is definitely the next guy in line for me. He didn't. Right? He said he would like to see him. Which, from the vibe that I got from his conversation, I think he did have someone lined up. I don't think the UFC would have said to him, look, you're going to get the winner of Błachowicz versus Pereira. Because yes, both guys are stand-up guys. But if you're the UFC, how can you guarantee a quick turnaround? Because look, one thing to add in this is we need to fill 2 UFC cards. Because when are we going to see this title fight happen? That's the question. Yuri wants to fight this year. Okay, he said that. So the cards that have not got main events at the moment are as follows. You've got UFC 293 in Sydney, Australia. That fight card is happening 10th of September. That's not too far away. We need a main event. Alex Volkanovski, he's out. Okay, he's recovering from injury. Israel Adesanya, I'll get to some chats in a minute. He wants to fight on that card. Right? But he's got some issues because Dricus Du Plessis doesn't want to fight then. And Sean Strickland has ruled himself out of the title fight. Oh, look, put 2 and 2 together, guys. That's all I'm saying. Because the other card that we've not got a main event before the end of the year is UFC 296 in December 16th in Las Vegas. But that'll be a big card. That, I think, was the card that they were targeting McGregor versus Chandler. Now, do you do a vacant light heavyweight title fight as a co-main event for the Jones versus Miocic fight? Maybe. I don't know. Is it main event worthy, or should it be a main event? If it's Yuri and Alex Pereira, you know, it's rare that they'll do that. Let's see. Okay, let's get some chats then. Okay, let's breeze past this. George Murray says, unless they do Izzy versus Yuri, it's gotta be Alex versus Yuri or Alex versus number 1 contender if the light heavyweight division has a ranking at the moment. Blockhead says, if Alex stops Yuri, when Jamal Hill returns, Alex versus Hill is a huge for an undisputed title if Alex can beat Yuri. Agree with that. Blockhead says, all the ranked light heavyweights coming off of a loss. The only win column is Yuri and Hill. Alex cannot punch down in the rankings. Yep, totally agree with you with that. But look, I think I've got a feeling that the UFC will turn to Yuri and offer him Izzy in Sydney, Australia. Question is, does Izzy want to do that fight? It is quite short notice in his backyard. Well, okay, not quite his backyard, but next to his backyard. So, although he lives in the US now, so he did say that he wants to fight on that card though. So, look, that's the only real option. Was that fight potentially talked about prior to Pereira and Błachowicz? Was it offered to Yuri? That's my question. And if Yuri is training his wrestling, it's going to be an interesting fight, Izzy versus Yuri. I would personally make it. However, I mean, we're going to get into the potential trilogy between Pereira and Izzy, but for the UFC looking at it now, that would set up the trilogy. If Izzy was to beat Yuri, of course, for the light heavyweight strap. And I guess the question is, does Pereira want to fight in another yet quick turnaround fight for the light heavyweight belt? Maybe. Maybe. I mean, one thing I can say is that Yuri had a phone call off Glover Teixeira straight after the fight. So Glover was putting in the works to get Pereira that fight with Yuri. But when is it going to be is the question, you know? It's not looking good at the moment. Alex versus Magomed for number 2, says George Murray. Ooh. Well, to be fair, Magomed Ankalaev is now fighting Johnny Walker. So that fight's going to take place, and I think that's a fantastic fight. Personally, I don't like the fight for Johnny Walker. I think Magomed Ankalaev is going to win. George says number 1 contender fight if the book for Yuri. UFC 300, Yuri versus Alex, McGregor versus Chandler, Rakic versus Magomed, Strickland versus Dricus du Plessis. Wow, that's stacked. That is stacksy. I mean, yeah, we'll have to see with that one. That's a lot. I love the Yuri versus Alex Pereira fight. Yeah, me too. Me too. But again, timing wise, that's the question really. They're desperate for that Sydney Australia card. Only time will tell. Time will tell. As for Jan Błachowicz though, we've got 2 fights for him. It'll either be Nikita Krylov, who's in at number 6, on a win at the moment, 3-fight win streak. So I think that'd be a good test. Personally, I think Błachowicz will be a bigger guy in that. Ultimate question is, can he stuff Krylov takedowns? I don't think he can. I think we could see a grappling masterclass from Krylov against Błachowicz, and then people will start to question Błachowicz and whether or not he should hang the gloves up, because he's getting on now. That's how I see it playing out. But my other options for Błachowicz would be the winner of Ryan Spann versus Anthony Smith. You know, because Spann's in at 10, Anthony Smith's in at 8. It would be a big jump then after that. But then you look at the guys around Błachowicz. Already fought Rakic, they're not going to rematch that. He could fight Johnny Walker, should Johnny Walker beat Ankalaev. But then he'd be coming off a loss and Johnny Walker would leapfrog him. So, yeah, for that reason, I think Błachowicz-Krylov is the best fight to make. Your favourite blockhead says, true, Izzy coming up to light heavyweight is the River card in his Texas Hold poker game for this division. All right. Yes, blockhead. Love that. So yeah, what do you reckon make of those matchups? Smash like on the video if you've not done so already, of course. And yeah, some solid picks. You guys laughing? Okay, at the moment. She just asked that. Lol, no, it would be called Joey. Yeah, Joey Alves. Thank you, and yes, I allowed him to call the boy Frankie. There you go. There's the announcement, guys. Ash's yet to be born third son will be called Frankie. Frankie Joel Easton. There you go. There you go. Yeah. Ash says, we all said Magomed needed to fight someone. Yeah, I mean, look, if he gets through Johnny Walker, then he could be knocking on the door for a title fight after that. You know, because then he'll be 19-1 with one. No contest. One draw, whatever it was. But yeah, all that. George says, sorry, JK, I'm driving. My English is no good. I mean, look, everyone, fair enough. I mean, you're doing a good job so far, my brother. Yeah, but fair play. All right, let's move on then. Let's talk about the main event. Let's talk about that main event, of course, shall we? Little bit of touch on that one. Who was shocked by that outcome? Justin Gaethje getting the second round head kick knockout against Dustin Poirier. Some interesting stats coming up in the news show regarding this fight. But first round was a bit of a pick-on for me. I personally had Dustin Poirier winning that first round. I think he was just a little bit slicker with his hands, and his timing was great as well. But look, what was surprising in that second round was Gaethje doesn't normally throw high kicks, and he masked it well, Leon Edwards style. I'm pretty sure that head kick just sent bad flashbacks for Kamaru Usman watching it cage side. But look, you know, it was a gimme belt. People aren't really a fan of the BMF belt, but it is what it is. And really, it's punched Gaethje's ticket for a lightweight title shot after this, is it not? Because if you're Gaethje, you're not going to really accept anything else. Of course, unless he might be forced to if Oliveira and Makhachev ends in a draw, but look, I can't see that happening. So, in which case, he might be given another test. I'd personally think he'll wait out and he'll wait for the winner of that fight. Would they? If Oliveira beats Makhachev, that's a big if. Do we really want to see Oliveira versus Gaethje too? I don't know. It's a tough sell for me. You know, if to be fair, it's a tough sell if Makhachev beats Oliveira again, and you do Makhachev versus Gaethje, because you know we've kind of already seen that fight play out with when we saw Khabib versus Gaethje, and the question going into that would be, can Gaethje actually stuff the takedowns of Makhachev, get Makhachev worrying a little bit, and then start picking him apart on the feet? So, you know, because we've all seen that tough fight with Volkanovski. He's human. So, yeah, some interesting thoughts there. But I guess the real question is what's going to be next with Dustin Poirier. Question is, could we see him at welterweight? I thought it would be a good idea, because I felt that he may have mentioned it in the past. But he kind of shot the idea down on Ariel's show yesterday, and said he's quite a bit of a small lightweight. He considers himself a small lightweight, which is quite shocking, really. So fair enough. We're not going to see a potential fight with Colby Covington, because I think Dustin's only really going to want these big matchups in a way. If we head into the rankings here, just to see what's different, of course, Gaethje taking that spot from Poirier. But yeah, so he's not going to accept the Dariush fight. I can't see it. You know, they've tried, I think, in the past, and he's turned it down. He said, no, I don't want to fight that guy. He's not really a big seller, you know. And when you're Dustin Poirier and you've put on these bangers against Conor McGregor and Conor McGregor money and big names like Charles Oliveira and fan favourites like Justin Gaethje, then why are you going to take a fight against Beneil Dariush? So I get it. Brian says, I said if Gaethje is patient, he could set up Poirier for the win. Just did not expect it in the second round. Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, spot on with your take there, man. And that's it. That's all she wrote. But yeah, for Dustin Poirier, then the only real option is the winner of Fiziev versus Gamrot. You know, that fight's going to take place in September 23rd. So not too far away. I favour Fiziev's chances in this, and personally, I would like to see Gamrot. If he loses to Fiziev, I'd like to see him at 145, because I think he can make 145. I really do. Maybe that should have been something we asked Ioana and Jacek. I think that would have been a really good question, because obviously she's friends with Gamrot. They've trained together, etc., etc. But yeah, Fiziev versus Poirier is not a really good fight. That opens Fiziev up for that fight now that Gaethje has beaten Poirier. So yeah, I'd like to see that. I think that's a barn burner. Brian says this sets up a chance for the third fight. I would love to see best two out of three, for Poirier versus Gaethje. Yeah, I get that. I think it will happen down the line. I just don't think it would be the next fight, really. I mean, it depends if there is like a hiccup in the Oliveira versus Makhachev fight. So Poirier has already said in an interview he lost, but he is the better fighter. Yes, indeed, he did say that. I hear the setup already in his voice. Yeah, he definitely wants that one back. I think we'll see it down the line. George says Gaethje on a collision course to the title. He caused issues for Khabib on the feet in their fight and did well to a degree in stuffing the takedowns, but I think he's got Islam's ticket. Ooh, yeah, okay. Good take from George there. Brian says, however, if Oliveira defeats Islam, we have the rematch of Charles versus Justin. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know if the UFC will want to do that. I mean, rightly so, you know, style-wise, I just think are they going to be able to sell it? So yeah, there would be my options, of course. Title fight for Justin Gaethje next in hindsight. And for Poirier, the winner of Fiziev versus Gamrot. That's pretty much a wrap in terms of this main card. Let's get into some socials then, shall we, guys? A few things to talk about in this scene here. First one up is, of course, is the potential trilogy between Alex Pereira and Israel Adesanya. But Alex Pereira says he wants it at middleweight. And look, few Aftermath shows ago, I said I would prefer to see the trilogy at middleweight because it's fair. And look, in the post-fight interview, what has he said? In my mind, we are 1-1 at middleweight. I won one at middleweight. Israel won the other one. Nothing more fair than to make the trilogy at middleweight. And I'm all for it. However, if you're an Izzy fan, this kind of favours you a little bit. Because look, we've seen Pereira struggle to make that weight cut. The question is, can he make it again? I'm not too sure, you know? And if he does make it again, he's going to be severely compromised going into that fight. So you're going to want the trilogy at middleweight. As somebody who prefers Alex Pereira over Israel Adesanya, I actually would prefer to see it at middleweight because I think it's fair. You know? At the end of the day, I'm all for fairness. Because if they have the third fight at 205, I think the needle swings heavily in Alex Pereira's favour. And that would be a straight up win. And then Izzy fans will complain. Izzy will complain himself and say, look, I lost against a natural light heavyweight. So, you know, that's the main excuse. I don't want excuses, you know, for a trilogy. I want a fair contest, but, you know, there will be, there's no denying that there will be a little bit of diminishing for Alex Pereira should he take the fight at middleweight. But look, that's a timing thing. I wouldn't use it as an excuse. The reason why Pereira lost, I would say it's fair and square. Personally. George says Dustin versus Rafael Fiziev. Yep, so he's on board with that as well. Yeah, didn't expect the head kick. Neither did I. Dustin can go to welterweight and blow the dust off Colby. Oh, he's denied it. He's denied it. George Merry says Dustin could beat Raf on the ground, but not on the feet. Agree with you there, buddy. But yeah, what do you reckon? Do you think that this trilogy should take place at middleweight? I think it should. To just being fair. Moving swiftly on then to whether or not Tony Ferguson is done or not, because he says he's not done. You know, I think he wants to get back in there. He's just kind of felt like he wasn't himself. He said, unfortunately, in sports, setbacks like this are part of the journey. While I won't use the eye poke as an excuse for the outcome, I know for a fact I have more to give. Moving forward, I plan to work closely with Dana, Hunter, and my entire team to assess what's next. Now, in my opinion, I think that Tony Ferguson is planning on fighting out of his contract. That's why he wants to stick around. You know, and that's why he believes he's got more to give. And look, he could be fair. You know, everyone's been saying that he should retire, and it's done. He's been very unfortunate. You know, he's had some levels of unfortunate in the octagon as of recent. You know, he looked good against Nate Diaz. He was winning the fight until he went for a takedown and got caught in a guillotine. He got caught. You know, it happens. In this fight, he was looking good. It was competitive on the feet against Bobby Green. Bobby Green was probably cruising to a decision anyways, but should you really be getting submitted by Bobby Green? You know, that's the question you got to ask yourself. So, you know, for that reason, you know, going back to what I said earlier, the Jim Miller fight makes a lot of sense. Miller is quite a bit of a stocky lightweight at the moment. He's very well rounded. He's always entertaining to watch. Future Hall of Famer, without a doubt. And I think that Tony can cause him problems. Tony's range, I think, can cause him problems. His unpredictability, his timing might be a bit better than Jim Miller's. If Jim Miller is going to beat Tony Ferguson, it probably would be by a submission. But the ultimate question is, can Jim Miller get Tony down? And whether or not Tony can expose himself and get level changed. That's kind of my sense on that. A lot of questions, of course, going into that fight, and I think it'd be a good one to make. Let's get to Ash's comment in just a bit later. But do you guys think that Tony Ferguson should retire? You know, it's just hard to see him lose. It really is, isn't it? But I think there's still some fights left in him. I really do. What do you guys think? Should he retire? Should he not retire? Yeah, like I said, I think few more. There's few more in that dog, I'm afraid. Few more. Let's move on then to third point, which of course, Justin Gaethje has turned down any possible fight against Conor McGregor. Wow, everyone's probably thinking, is that guy in his right mind? You know, get your biggest payday. Why wouldn't you? I think a lot of people probably would rather do that. It says, I'm not going to fight someone on steroids. I've never taken steroids in my life. Never will. I've never taken steroids, and I don't want to fight someone that's cheating. So he's calling Conor out, of course, for not getting himself in the testing pool, and everyone suspect that Conor did potentially take something in come to healing his leg. I potentially think he did. I think there's evidence in that physically. Ash says one more to give. I can't see it when he fights. He says, in terms of Tony, Blockhead says again he deserves a main event on a fight night. He neither hangs it up or we see him gives us some more entertaining fights to enjoy. Yeah, I agree. But yeah, would Justin Gaethje actually accept it? If he was actually given the fight? That's the question. I got a feeling that he might. You know, if he was actually handed to him. There was, I think, a little bit of a back and forth on Twitter between the two guys. Haven't got that to show you at the moment, but yeah, I think Gaethje would be a bit silly not to. But why would Conor chase a fight? I mean, it makes sense to chase a fight for Gaethje, but you've just done the whole tough series against Chandler. I think the Chandler fight is a better fight for him. You know, I'd rather see that. If you beat Chandler, then yeah, you know, Gaethje versus Conor, give it to me on a plate, 100%. Blocker says, and also El Cucumber must live on somehow, not just in Triple B's head. There you go. Love that, Brian. Love that. Let's move on from chatting about Gaethje versus Conor, because I'm done with it. It's not going to happen. So this is an interesting stat for you guys. The UFC pay-per-view main event wins via head kick. We've got Usman getting KO'd by Leon Edwards, Ronda Rousey getting KO'd by Holly Holm, Anderson Silva with his front kick against Vitor Belfort, we've got GSP's head kick against Matt Hughes, and then of course the number 5th one, Gaethje head kicking Dustin Poirier. My question for you guys, which one of those 5 is your favourite? Which one? Looking at it now, I don't think it was this past weekend's one. That's not my fave. I actually might go with, I don't know. Oh, it's such a tough one. Look, you probably think I'd go with GSP, but I'm not going to go with GSP. Now, the reason why is because I wasn't into the sport back then when that fight took place. So I can't give that one. I think it's out of the first 3. Leon Edwards, Holly Holm, and Anderson Silva. Most shocking wise, Leon Edwards without a doubt. Because it was the 5th round, he was losing the fight, and then it happened. Oh, it's so close. Holly Holm, of course, was an amazing one because Ronda was on this absolute tear, just armbarring everyone, and she come out of nowhere, landed that head kick. The Anderson Silva one was shocking, nonetheless, because it was just so quick. Like, it just happened in a blink of an eye, you know? And it's very unique as well, because it was a front kick. To land that pinpoint was pretty impressive. I've got to go with Kamaru Usman. Leon Edwards' one against Kamaru Usman. That would be my favourite. I missed it in live, but it's still one of the best. Brian says, I literally yelled at the screen in my fellow podcaster's house, shut up and go do another line of coke, Connor, when that tweet popped up on the ESPN screen. Yeah. I'm so over Connor at this point. I think we all are, really. You know? We really are. The Connor train has just really kind of fell off. Of course, I'm always going to be pumped to see him fight. It's going to be entertaining. And I think the next one will sell tickets. We'll get bums in seats. And hopefully we get an entertaining press conference out of it. But yeah, some of his antics now is just like, really? The new Connor 2.0 to get behind is Ian Gary. Yes, potentially. I think Ian Gary's got a really good style to do big things in the welterweight division, and I think you're right. I really do. But yeah, don't forget to answer which one of those is your favourite out of those head kicks.Moving on though, will Derrick Lewis leave the UFC for the PFL? Because the PFL, after that post-fight interview with Derrick Lewis, where he said that he's now a free agent and he's not got a contract, the PFL did come up with that tweet. It says heavyweight free agent with the hair sticking up on the arm there. Meme. Intriguing. Very intriguing, because Derrick Lewis has a win over Francis Ngannou. Francis Ngannou is their big money maker that they've recently signed. He's due to make his PFL debut next year in 2024. So that fight for the debut makes a lot of sense. But not only that, if you're Derrick Lewis, surely you could earn more money over a PFL with that fight against Francis Ngannou, because part of Francis's deal with the PFL and what he was campaigning for, that he wanted a fair fee for his opponents. Okay? So take that what you will. Okay? Do you guys think that Derrick Lewis will head on over to the PFL? Now, I should clear something up, because in his post-fight interview, he did say, I'm hoping to stay here in the UFC. I like it here. I like the staff. Everybody's cool here, except for the media. He said, y'all are dickheads. F y'all. F all y'all. Really, I should walk out right now on y'all, but go ahead. Next question. So do you think the PFL could make Derrick Lewis change his mind? I think they'll be on the phone to him for sure. I think there's going to be a bit of a fight who can get the signature of Derrick Lewis. So what do you guys think? I don't know, man. I would be hopeful that he re-signs with the UFC. He is entertaining to watch. Similar to, a bracket to Tony, he could go on a 6-fight losing streak. I think we're still going to tune in for Derrick Lewis with the potential of a highlight reel knockout. The guy's got the most knockouts in, I think, UFC history, right? Definitely in heavyweight history, nonetheless. But yeah, that's my thought. Chats then. Mine is Leon, heading to the previous note, says Ash, could agree. Favourite shocker, Leon, most legendary and recognised worldwide, Anderson Silva. Yeah, okay, fair, Brian, I like that. Ash said, but then again, Anderson Silva saw that and was like, that guy is the GOAT. Yeah, I know, yeah. I remember that moment for sure. That was shocking. Being so young as well, it was quite good. But yeah, what do you guys think? Do you think Derrick Lewis is going to re-sign with the UFC? Will he be tempted by a move to Bellator? But then the other question, I guess, on the other hand, is there's probably going to be better fights for him in the UFC, because yeah, you could get a good payday against Francis Ngannou, but then what's next after Francis Ngannou? I mean, look, maybe the PFL will do a trilogy if he beats Francis. But if you lose to Francis, then I guess he could just knock out any... I don't know. Has PFL even got much of a heavyweight division? I don't think they have. So, interesting. Yeah, I would side... I think he should sign back with the UFC. That's my take on it. But, yeah, that's basically all we got time for the